Hello and welcome to another Micro Talk presented by GGP. I'm here talking with Tiffany Tsang, Senior Project Manager of Titles at Demonware. Hello, Tiffany. How's it going?
It's going great. How's it going for you, Rob?
It's doing well. Can you sort of talk a little bit about your job and what this actually means?
Yeah, so just to give a little disclaimer, all everything I say today is just views, my own views, and does not represent the views of my employer. For me, I am the senior project manager for online services at Demonware, and we produce everything that lets you play Call of Duty online. So everything from authentication and login, matchmaking, progression, making sure you get your items, and of course all of the social features, such as your friends list, being able to chat, and all of that fun stuff.
So, I brought you here today because I wanted to talk to you about toxicity. And I feel like we need to start with a baseline of what that means. So, what is your definition of toxicity?
My definition of toxicity, especially online, is any sort of hate speech or harassment. Anything that you say or do that makes someone feel unwelcome or hurt, whether it's a personal attack or it's attacking a certain group that that person is dear to or is a part of. And so, this would include everything, in my opinion, everything from hate speech towards different racial groups or different genders or against the LGBT community, or even, things like, being very aggressive or bullying. Um, it also could extend to something like online stalking or, something as basic as trolling. Some people just think that it's funny, but at the end of the day, someone feels hurt, and that to me is toxicity.
So, what are some of the characteristics of a toxic community? How can someone know that they're walking into some place that is prone to some of the things that you were talking about?
For one, anywhere where there's a lot of user-generated content or any sort of chat group or some sort of community forum where people can actually start talking. I think you need to walk into those with some level of expectation that there's going to be some internet troll there or someone that has a different opinion, and they might say something or do something that is potentially hurtful to you. And so, how do you recognize something like that? You see someone that they're typing something that is directed at someone, or some sort of hate speech, or it's something where you feel like they're being very aggressive or overly aggressive. I know oftentimes in gaming, people get competitive, but sometimes it just goes beyond a certain point, and you start to feel their aggression, and it becomes uncomfortable. And that's when, just based on your gut feel, you would probably recognize that you're now in a very toxic environment.
Uh, we're starting to see more of these games sort of to build up communities like Fortnite, Fall Guys now. Like they're bigger and bigger communities, and sort of like a part of the experiences of being a part of these communities. So, as a developer, let's start there. What can they do to help minimize toxicity within the community?
I think there's several ways of handling it. The first one is actually, tackling any sort of toxic behavior. This could be running any sort of text chat or any user input, such as their usernames through some sort of profanity filter, and actually just shadow mute or wipe out some of the bad language there. Or it can be something more extreme where you actually don't allow for any sort of user input. You mentioned Fall Guys, right? For Fall Guys, you don't get to set your own character name, and it doesn't take your first party name either. It just use Fall Guy number, right? That already eliminates a lot of opportunity for people to actually put in very hateful words in their username. So that's one way of doing it. Um, Another way that we've seen, with Fortnite and everything is, upon creating your character, it has to pass a profanity filter, and only certain words are allowed or not allowed, and you would actually have that feedback right then and there. Obviously, it still doesn't stop a lot of more creative instances of things, right? But that is a downfall, I guess, in technology where we haven't quite caught up with the human creative brain. Sorry.
No, no, no. I mean, you're bringing up a lot of like amazing points. Like, I never thought about the fact that in Fall Guys, because you cannot name yourself, that sort of gives you a bit of protection from, the harmful names or anything that could be offensive to other people. And that seems to be like a really great strategy in there. We also see sort of the minimizing of communication between certain people within in there with certain games, working with a ping system. If you need to communicate with someone, you can just sort of like point it out, and uh, you know instead of having to use your voice to chat, you can just ping whatever it is, which turns out to be a very effective way. uh, can you think of any other like really effective strategy or tactics that people or developers are using now to help fight toxicity?
Yeah, I think you just mentioned one of them, and that is actually just implementing a ping system, right? Another one is just implementing emojis. So you can just send an emote. Your character will does a special dance or does a hand gesture, and that removes the need to actually type a message or even voice chat, where we see a lot of the aggressive behavior tends to happen on. In terms of other strategies, just making sure that any type of input would actually go through some sort of toxicity filter, whether it's something that you build yourself, through regex, or it's something that you purchase through a third party. I think that has been becoming increasingly important. Um, of course, there is a lot of maintenance that needs to happen there, and there's a lot of things that needs to go with it. For example, you'll have to consistently update that dictionary or that tool so that it keeps up with current events. For example, even going on right now, but started a couple months ago, the Black Lives Matter movement. It actually started a lot of toxic behaviors within the Call of Duty community, where people were using the victim's name or the police's name, and starts creating all sorts of very uh, offensive usernames. And for that type of thing, a lot of it is using words that are previously not part of our dictionary. For example, George Floyd, that name actually never belonged to our profane dictionary, right? So, just keeping up with current events and adding it to the dictionary and catching these things requires some level of maintenance. The other level of like maintenance that needs to happen in terms of like owning a toxicity filter is that a lot of the times people get very creative by combining non-offensive words into something that contextually becomes offensive, right? For example, take the Black Lives Matter movement again, right? Um, they might say, and this might be offensive for certain people, right? They might string together three words: kill, all, and then a racial group, right? And those three words on by themselves might not necessarily be offensive, especially in a world of Call of Duty where killing something it's what you do in the game, right? But once you do string it together, the context of it becomes very offensive, and that's kind of where we haven't been able to keep up in terms of the toxicity filters that are out there. And so as we see more of these examples, we can start building better tech, but it does create a maintenance that needs to happen with the technology. Um, Other tactics that we found to be helpful, but also require some level of you know um, effort, is that it doesn't matter if you start if you have a filter, right? You need to take action on it to show users that there is a consequence in their toxic behavior, right? Whether it's just muting the word or going as far as renaming certain characters that have offensive words in their username, or even as far as banning someone for a week or permanently because of their behavior. That still takes some level of human effort, but there are very but they are very effective tactics for curbing some of that behavior.
I want to go back a little bit because you did mention going through words and basically how strings of words could be used in different ways in order to create something that is harmful. And we've also seen it also in gestures. I think there was a news article just recently about having to take out the OK signal in one of the games because it became sort of like a symbol of white power was one of the things that had to come out. How like what is the process of actually going in and understanding like what is this line that we're gonna have to cross? Like who's sort of in charge of it, and who gets to update the list, and how often is it updated to make sure that these things are sort of taken care of?
I guess it depends on, each game developer and their organization, but there are actually a lot of people that are involved in this. One is, uh, within my organization, we try to make it a crowdsource effort where, because we have a diverse background, because we all have different, racial or contextual backgrounds, we are more aware of different things that are going on, and we are able to actually create a channel that allows people to actually suggest these things and say that, hey, in my community, this just came up. We should look into it because this word or this series of words might now become offensive. And once you start that conversation, then we kind of loop in, public policy group, our legal consultants, and sometimes even our executive team, where they actually sit down and say like, look, like we're going to allow this, but we're not going to allow this other word. And we start having that conversation and then feed it back into the system and say, let's update the dictionary. This is okay, this is not okay.
Uh, so that how do you manage to bring such a diverse group together? Like how uh, that seems like you need to get like a voice from like a lot of different people. Like how important it is making sure that you have that diversity, and how do you make sure that you have like someone from like different places as well as different areas that can talk about these things?
So, how do we create that diverse group? I think that is really by through education and hiring. When we start screening for candidates, we do look for candidates that have different sorts of background, whether it's their sexual orientation, their gender, their racial background, or even education background, right? And we try to hire as diverse of a group as we could, not just simply based on experience and technical skill set. So that in itself already creates a good community of different viewpoints, and we have created a safe environment where people can actually bring these up. For us, there's a Slack channel for diversity and inclusion, and people regularly will post news articles or their opinions about things that are happening on there. And so people are kept abreast of everything that's going on and the different viewpoints that are out there. Um, and then in terms of how we continue these conversations, I think it's really just creating that safe environment and letting people know that if something is making you uncomfortable and you want to reflect that back into our games, here's the channel for you to bring that up, and we are fully supportive of it.
So, and you also, I want to now, I feel like I keep jumping around here, but you also say, like, previously you were talking about, like, muting certain words and sort of, like, giving that feedback to the player, letting them know, like, what is allowed and what is not allowed. Can you go in a little bit more depth about, how do you let the player know when something they've crossed a line, whether or not they know it or not? Again, like going into something as the OK signal that they might not have been aware of, but now that's it's been taken over by like another group. How do you let them know that that is no longer okay? That needs to be that is that is crossing a line that they need to back away from?
I think there's different scenarios in that. If it's something that happens through text chat, we'll just replace it with asterisks, for example, and that already gives you a visual indication that what you just said is not okay. When it comes to creating usernames or user-created content, if it as soon as you type submit on something, it'll run through a filter and it'll come back with an error message saying that this does not align with our terms of use or our safe community guidelines. And so that is another form of feedback. In terms of something like using an emote, usually I think games are pretty quick in doing small updates to actually remove that sort of thing. But if it still exists in the game, then I think the user is still allowed to use it. And if and the onus will then be on the game developers to be aware of that and actually take that out of the game.
I want to jump over now to sort of esports because that's become sort of the new face of the community, sort of the forward facing. Like these are the model of like the people that we hold to the highest regard. How do you deal with, or what is done to deal with toxicity within the esports profession, or what is being done to make sure that the groups that are playing reflect the best possible community?
Yeah, esports is an interesting one, I think, because of the publicity of the players and how we stream their matches and we actually stream sometimes, even their conversations. A lot of it, I think, is, there's a lot of coaching that is needed for esports players and their coaches, where we have guidelines on, what professionalism means and what's okay to say and what not. Of course, if you look at the news, there's been instances where there's been aggressive behavior or someone has to come out and apologize for something that they said during a game. So, things like that happen when people get very heated in the moment and they say something. But overall, I think a lot of it really comes down to the coaches working with the players and making sure that they don't get into a habit of saying something that might be offensive while live. I think part of it is culture, part of it is education, but a lot of it is really habits, right? There's no reason why anyone needs to use the F word in between every word. A lot of the time, it's just a matter of habit, and that can be corrected as well.
What do you see as the future, maybe in technology, maybe in the way that we bring people together in community, but what is the future of sort of curbing technology, tech, of toxicity within these different communities?
I think the first one is really technological advances. As we get better with machine learning, we can now collect data on what people say or do and start teaching our algorithms to start catching a lot of the toxic behavior as they happen. Even in being able to just catch what's trending and setting alerts on oh, here's this new thing that's trending on Twitter, maybe we should pay attention, and helping us improve that profanity filter, I think will already help us in a big way. The other thing, and I kind of alluded this, in the esports question, is that a lot of it, I think, comes with education and, building awareness amongst the online community that, we're trying to be good citizens here, and things that you don't say in real life to people or you don't do to people, IRL, probably shouldn't be done online as well. Um, the other thing I think that is not helping with toxicity is that a lot of the times when you're online, you maintain this anonymous identity. But I think as the world moves to become more digital, I think there's going to be more and more overlap between our real life identities versus our online identities. And once you do hold people accountable for things that they say and do online, then I think that's where we start to see better behavior from people.
You mentioned education as a part of this whole helping to curb toxicity within the community. What can we do, or what can we start doing to help educate people, whether it is people who are causing the toxic behavior or people who are being targeted by the behavior itself?
So for the people that are exerting the toxic behavior or the incorrect behavior, right? I think a lot of the times it's just um, it's one of two things, right? One, it's ignorance; they don't understand that what they said could be hurtful, and two, they're doing it on purpose because they want a certain type of attention. And so, for the first one where they're ignorant, they didn't know, just telling them in a good way that, hey, what you said was not okay, is probably enough to, help them understand what they just said. With the second instance where they know it's wrong but they're still doing it because they think it's funny, or they think it they think they're going to get a certain level of attention. This is mostly with like internet trolls, right? Is I think simply just ignoring them, or having some sort of reporting mechanism to just ban these folks, just to have some repercussion for their behavior.
What would you like to see in the future when it comes to uh, controlling this sort of toxic behavior, or what kind of what would you like to see coming from developers, or maybe even some of the future developers are listening to us right now, in creating games to help curb some of this behavior?
I think my advice to developers and how we can curb this behavior is really think about when you're designing this game and you're allowing for user input, what is the risk and what is the benefit trade-off in it, right? Are you, for example, in terms of usernames, yeah, you want to give people that creative outlet to, name themselves whatever they want, but is it absolutely necessary in helping change the player experience? Does it actually make the player experience that much better? Or is this something that you're willing to put through a profanity filter and maintain, right? And start looking at that username. Uh, it could be something like reducing the number of inputs. For example, you know, uh, let's say you create a clan within Call of Duty, right? Is it necessary to have some sort of clan or guild description describing what you do? Because here's another area for user input. But if no one ever reads the description on anything, does it really matter to have it or not? If it doesn't, why not eliminate it? So keep in mind when you're making design choices for gameplay and user experience, and evaluate that risk, right? Is this something that you will have to monitor for toxic behavior? Is this going to allow for people to have toxic behavior? And keep that in mind when you're designing the game.
One of the things that we do here is we have a lot of people who on the Discord channel who are also students within game development, looking to see like what things they can start doing once they get out of college. What was your path to where you are now? How did you sort of get into the role that you're in?
I actually graduated from business school, so I actually don't have any programming experience. But I've always worked in software because I've always felt passionate about technology, and so it just so happened that I applied for Demonware because I'm an avid gamer myself, and that just opened up a whole new world of the game industry for me. So part of it is by chance, but part of it is also applying for things that you're passionate about and you have an interest for, because that does set you apart, during the interview process. That will help you sound more engaged and sound more interested in this as well.
Well, this has been absolutely eye opening and a fantastic look into how to tackle toxicity, especially within the sort of the development side of things. If people want to follow what you do, or uh, they have any other questions, is there any sort of social media that they should be following, or any sort of online resources that you can recommend?
I would keep abreast of like current affairs and understand everything that is happening in the world right now and how it will affect minorities in different kinds of groups, minority groups really, and just understanding and educating yourself and how what's happening is hurtful to a certain group. I think that already plays a huge part. The other part is I think there are more and more resources online now about machine learning or profanity filters, and just reading up on that type of thing and learning about how the linguistics uh, work as well will be very helpful.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming by today. And if you happen to have any other questions about video game development, uh, toxicity, uh, creating better communities, please come by the GGP Discord server, where there will be other people just like you to help answer your question, as well as uh, other ways to build better games for the future. Once again, thank you, Tiffany, for coming by, and I will talk to you later.
Thank you, Rob, and the GGP community for this invite. This has been a great chat. Thank you all. Bye.